Hey guys, this is John, and we're playing RV Mr. Meister. This is a 10+0 climbing the rating ladder game. Let's go. No increment. I'm going to try to do better with my time management than I did last time. Okay, Queen F3. Number of moves black can play here. I'm going to play Queen A5. Could also play Knight F6 or Queen D8. Could take the queen, but let's keep the queens on board. Okay, Knight C3, I'll just play Knight F6. I don't think white's queen is all that well placed on F3. I could potentially play Knight B6, Knight D4. I definitely have my sights set on doing that. I think I will. Because in addition to Knight D4, Knight E5 is kind of irritating for white, right? They have to watch out for the fork of the queen and the bishop, unless they want to part with the bishop pair. Okay, Bishop E5 with the pin. Let's go Bishop D7. I'm recording this the day after Gukesh won the candidates. Congratulations to D. Gukesh of India. That was quite something. I'm pretty tired today. I'm not going to lie. I'm like adrenaline dumping from that tournament. I woke up like bolt upright at 5 a.m. today, which is earlier than I usually get up. And I was thinking about the tournament, just all of the drama, the Fabi versus Nepo game. Amazing event. Amazing event. And I may actually try to cover some higher level tournaments in the future. I'm not going to go ahead and guarantee that right now, but I am a fan of those events. I pay pretty close attention to the big ones, so it'd be cool to cover them on the channel. All right, D3. So I played a few moves that looked pretty standard here while I was talking. I could try to swing my queen over something like Queen H5, which would force a queen trade, but I don't think I have to yet. Maybe I can castle first and try to sneak Knight E5 in still. Let me think which way I want to castle, because both options are tempting. I do think this is a position where I could conceivably go both ways. I'm going to play... Now, if I castle long, then Knight E5 isn't the threat, is the thing, because they can take with check. So, okay, let's go short. Let's castle short. Yeah, and white is allowing Knight E5. Is it actually a blunder? Because their queen can try to link up with the bishop, but only from F4. So I think Knight E5 is good. Just pausing for a moment, because if this works, it's going to win me some material, I reckon. So yeah, let's play it. If queen takes B7, I take here. I think white has to go Queen F4. That's the only way to save the queen and put it on a square that also defends the bishop. I'm kind of assuming I have something there. I don't 100% know yet what it is. Knight takes D3 at a bare minimum looks good. Discovered attack. But we'll think about it. Okay, white actually takes here, and my first thought is, did I miss something? But I don't believe so, because when I take, if white were to go B4, I can take with the bishop. So I'm not quite seeing what white is up to here. Knight D5 doesn't work. I can take it. So, all right. Show me what you got, Meister. Show me what you got. And then I'm also in a position to play bishop C6. Like if white plays B3, let's say, I can drop the bishop back and hit white's queen. Knight E4. Yeah, this hits my queen, but doesn't seem to do much else. So Queen B6, Queen B5, both come to mind. Okay, white can kind of damage my king side, but for the price of a piece, that can't possibly be worth it for white. There's also even bishop C6, but I don't think I have to get involved with that. Yeah, probably drop the queen to B5 or B6. Real close call here. Maybe slight preference for B6. It looks a little more normal. But again, I can afford to pause here. In my mind, we've already hit a pretty critical point of the game. I'm also noticing Queen D5 is now a move. I should know that as a Scandi player. But Queen D5 didn't cross my mind because previously the knight was on C3. So maybe this is even cleaner, because that actually forces a queen trade, I believe. Knight takes F6, pawn takes F6, and white cannot keep this queen on board. So I'm going to go for that one. The bishop's a little loose on a4, but there's no way for white to take advantage of it. We can pre-move the capture. Okay, white takes on d6 instead. But I think same principle. I can take... If I take on b7, white takes with the knight. So yeah, let's just take them with the pawn. They can flee to e7, but that's not going to save the queen either, I don't think. Just gets further into my layer here. Okay, trade. Now, I'm just being cautious of potential pawn forks that white might throw at us. We got a bunch of minor pieces out on the 4th, 5th ranks, but a big signal with pawn forks is when the minor pieces are on the same color square with one square in between. So if I put my bishop on b5, for instance, I'd be walking into a c4 fork, which could be relevant if white plays b3. I'd want to drop the bishop to c6 or d7. So white plays f4 instead. Probably knight g4 here. I think I like this one. Again, just trying to be wary of forks, but I like this square because I might be able to work into e3. The c2 pawn still is hanging. I would expect white to want to play b3 here soon. Yep, they do. And again, I'm not stepping to b5. That is the most aggressive looking square that I could be retreating to, but you're going to walk right into a fork. So if you pick nothing else up from this video, watch out for that pattern because that'll get you. It has got many a player. So let's play the bishop all the way back. Rook f3. Makes sense. And I'm just going to conversion town here. I'm going to play f5, actually. Give the knight a square here. So if white plays h3, I can retreat. My knights are stepping on each other's toes a little bit. I'm noticing that white might play for bishop b4, so I should be aware of that. Yeah, f5 might have been a little sloppy on my part. Still should be fine, but, you know, say knight e7, bishop b4, I might have to play a move like knight c8. At least temporarily. Same thing with knight b6. Yeah, I guess I'll do that. Knight e7, knight c8. Okay, white not playing bishop b4, though. I wonder if they notice that this is possible. Main reason I played f5 is just to gain some space and block white's f-pawn too, get some influence, and this pawn is protected. Okay, so since white is not going bishop b4, I'm thinking about preventing that. This move doesn't seem to have a threat. So I'm thinking about a5. Yeah, let's play it. a5 looks good. And then they play this one. Yeah. Again, sloppy on my part. I'm missing some ideas here. And there's the problem with my f5 move. All right, let's see. So I probably have to shed the pawn. Let's think about the best way to do that. Not going to panic or anything. I think this position still should be plenty good. But, you know, not my best technique. I'm just going to go rook e8. Try to meet knight takes e6 with... oh, maybe I can go knight d5 actually against that. Okay, but they don't quite take it yet. Good thinking on their part. All right. Knight g6. King f7. Definitely makes some sense, but they're going to win that pawn back now. Okay, I think I'm going to play a4 to start. And they take. Okay. Thought they might delay that, but no. They take. Okay. I want to move this knight. Let's go here. Knight c7 I can take on e3. Yeah, definitely need to speed up. Actually, I'm getting some flashbacks from my last Climbing the Rating Ladder game because the speed at which this opponent is playing, obviously I'm up the material, but I'm getting sloppy. I'm making some mistakes, and I think I'm getting a little nervous because of their time usage. I'm not playing up to my full abilities here, which is a little jarring. Okay, should I take here? I think that's a consideration. No, the pawn gets captured. Okay, so let's play rook c8. And then knight b5, I'm going to take and play d5 probably. Yeah, capture and play for d5. But again, this has gotten way closer than it should have been, so I am not happy with my technique. And I'm going to have to play accurately from this point forward. Let's play rook b8, target this pawn. Not sure this move did much. They might just want to go back now. Because this is a big-time threat. b4. Can't I simply take that pawn? What gives? I don't see why not. And when you don't see why not, and you have far less time than your opponent, then you should probably go with your instincts. So let's take. Yeah, it's a hard thing to do in chess when your opponent is really pressuring you on the clock. I mean, you just saw this in the candidates when you think of Jan Nepomniachtchi, that game against Fabi in the last round, and many games that Jan plays, I feel like he's an expert at putting pressure on the clock. He's really, really good at that. Okay. d4, knight c2. That's a nice little idea if it works. Just a little tactic that flicked across my brain here, just kind of skittered through my thoughts. I think that works. Bishop a7, I have rook b1. Weird little fork. Bishop takes f6, I have knight takes e3. Consequential decision, but let's go for it. Oh no, my pawn. And white pretty much has to take, right? Because this is a fork anyways. This is that pattern I was talking about with two pieces being caught by a pawn with one square in between. That can very often happen along the same rank. Yeah, and this is going to fail to this. I guess they can pick up the exchange. Are there other moves I would consider? Nah, not under the circumstances. We'll just play like this. Take the exchange and try to convert this position. Okay, get the bishop engaged. Rook b2. If d4, I can always play knight e4 if I want. Again, getting sloppy. Just blunder knight takes f5. Fortunately, I can check and play bishop takes g2. But the knight is on the board. We got to be cognizant of that. Okay, I think I'm going to throw in check first. Just to see where white goes with their king. Yeah, now probably g6 is a good solidifying move. If here, I can check again and then maybe knight h5. And on this one, maybe knight e4. I think this knight e4 move might be the cleanest. Yeah, let's just get that knight in. Try to swap. I would love to get that piece off the board. Okay, now white's blundering. Not my best climbing the rating ladder game. Take, c7. I can stop that with rook c2. And then here, let's go check and then pick up the pawn. Well, and it's still not over either, is it? Let's just cut them off, go after this pawn. Try to keep this super simple. Bring the king up too. This is solid. Cemento, as Peter Lako says. Super cemento. We'll go after this pawn now. Oh, that was a piece. Okay. Yeah, probably one of my sloppiest games in recent memory, dropping pawns. Just get it all out, John. Just this is an educational series, you know, right? I should be able to win up multiple pieces, I hope. Check. Okay, I can win this bishop now. Check. Check. Okay. After many adventures, I highly, highly doubt. Okay. Even 2 mistakes, 0 blunders, 0 misses sounds a little generous. I was going to say, if it said 0, 0, 0 for a second, that seemed extremely generous. Guys, we all play chess games like this every once in a while. Don't overthink it too much if you do. That was a hard-earned single rating point. Yeah. I was kind of rattled by missing the bishop b4 move and then later the knight d4 move. And obviously it worked out in the end, but there were many small misses on my part that in different circumstances, perhaps I would have been punished for. Even stuff like knight takes f5 here. At this point, it doesn't matter so much unless I literally blunder a piece. But those are the type of things like they can add up and contribute to the flip of a result, especially if time is a factor. So yeah, I think I really got too cute here with f5. Looking back, this move just seems really unnecessary. I thought I was gaining some space and it was fairly risk-free, but suddenly c4, and had white gone bishop b4, I would have had to play a passive move. Not the end of the world, but I think I should have simply played something like a5 right away. And then if c4, I can play knight b4. Looks useful. Or maybe rook fc8, something like that. We'll check the opening real quick. I know some viewers might have tuned out after white played queen takes b7 and allowed bishop takes a4, but you can see it was still competitive after that, as I was figuring out the best way to try to convert and failing miserably. Good move by white, I think, to play rook e1 here rather than knight takes e6, because I think if they had played knight takes e6, I probably could have got away with this. Knight d5, which really seems like it should not work. But I think that actually bails me out here with all my material gains intact. But they played rook a e1, and yeah, I mean, clearly white also making mistakes. Like b4, I didn't understand. That just gives me this pawn. Maybe they thought this was a dead pawn or didn't want to play knight b5, but knight d6 was kind of impulsive. Was happy with d4 and getting that fork. But yeah, the technique left a lot to be desired here, even in this stage of the game. Losing my f-pawn, just launch the f-pawn into oblivion. But all right, we get the win. Let's click into the game review. Yeah, that queen f3 move, I have faced that a few times. We get an 81.6 to 73.6 for my opponent. Let's turn off the feedback here. Yeah, so it gets a full question mark. That's a little harsh. It's not like white is worse after queen f3, but hard to believe that that's a serious try for an advantage. Knight f6, queen d8, queen a5, all those moves are playable. I played queen a5 because, as you guys probably are aware, against knight c3, I've been playing a lot of queen a5 lately. I also have a course on queen d8 that's on Chessable. So I thought I'd keep it kind of thematic here and keep queens on board. And if I can get that knight to c6 like I did in the game, I'm feeling quite good about this, pointing at the d4 and e5 squares. This reveals how the queen can be a liability on f3. Yeah, and then white plays another move to put the bishop on b5, pinning my knight, but I don't mind that because bishop d7 is a pretty easy response. Yeah, a6. Engine's being really harsh here, so is there like knight b4 or something? Wondering if something like that might work, but there's queen takes b7. Yeah. I gotta say, I'm not a big fan of a lot of this feedback. I feel like the feedback on chess.com is something you can easily read into too much. I mean, a full question mark for something that moves the advantage 2/10 of a pawn or less. I don't think it should be that way. I think that's far too much. Same way I felt about my opponent's move, queen f3. Like, yeah, it's not knight c3. It's not one of the theoretically critical moves, but it doesn't deserve a question mark. Maybe a dubious mark at best. So maybe that's another thing you guys can take away from this. I'm sure chess.com changes their algorithms a lot, but in my opinion, they got to dial this back because I think it's sending the wrong message a lot of times. So bishop d7. Yeah, I mean, e6, e5, castles long. I got to admit, I wasn't really thinking about castling long here, but that does, whether I do it in this position or after a6, that does nicely defend b7. So I wonder if there could be something connected to knight b4, like let's say castles. Does this move work? Take, and then I kind of say, hey, it's awkward for you to defend your c2 pawn when your queen is nowhere near being able to help out on that square. White can't go to f5, e4, d3. But okay, a6. I think this is all pretty normal. Bishop d6. Both sides just developing. But I was already starting to sniff out that at some point I could renew this threat of knight e5, which I mentioned during the game was one thing I was trying to set up here if white was inattentive. So let's say they played knight e2 to stop knight d4. I would have uncorked knight e5 with the fork and at minimum win the bishop pair. So it occurred to me that I could try to do the same thing, and that's why I decided to castle short here. It's a big decision a lot of times in the Scandinavian. Do you castle short? Do you castle long? It's pretty situational. I would say normally castling short is correct. And in general, I would say the closer you are to beginner level, the more often you should be castling short. I wouldn't try to get complicated and castle long. That is a more sophisticated strategy a lot of times. It just takes longer, period, to castle long because obviously you have to move your queen first to do it. So it's a more time-consuming operation. You're risking your king being in the center for longer. Here I'm playing the Scandinavian where I move my queen out. I'll move two, so that's a bit of a moot point. But that would be my broad advice. If you're a beginner or closer to beginner, you should probably be castling short, you know, probably 90% of the time or more, just sort of ballparking it. But there are certain openings and certain lines where it's situational, and I kind of calibrate that decision based on my willingness to take risk. You know, who am I playing? Do I feel I can outplay them with a more calm position with the kings on same sides of the board? Or do I want maybe a messier affair with mutual pawn storms if we go long? Maybe it's a must-win game in a tournament or something, final round. There's a lot of considerations that can go into something like that. But here, I mainly castled short because I want to get in this knight e5 move, and I do not want white to be able to play bishop takes d7 with check, right? So white made a mistake here with bishop d2. This move might actually deserve 2 question marks. But let's say the analogous line, I castle long, and then white plays bishop d2. Well, I can still play knight e5, hit their queen, and hit this bishop on a4 twice, but they always have this bailout move coming with check. Bishop takes d7 with check. In between move. In between moves with check are showstoppers. You have to attend to the check, and that buys white time to move their queen and not have to suffer with that hit piece on a4. So black's still doing well here, but I'm not winning a piece. So I castle. Yeah, bishop d2, knight e5. I got to say at this point, when I'm making these videos, I kind of hate when there's a big mistake early on because I'm just thinking, oh, is this video going to be instructive? You guys have said, though, that you do prefer when I post even the shorter games. So I'm just posting everything that I play, period, in this series, except for the aborted games and stuff, which does happen. And I think this was instructive because you guys saw me struggle to convert after this at a few practical moments. So queen takes b7. Yeah, this is indicative of my form that I just didn't even consider trapping white's queen with rook fb8. That's also really sloppy. I'm glad I'm reviewing this because I need to be more on the ball. That's a classic queen trap, but I was so focused on bishop takes a4, it didn't even cross my mind. So kudos to you in the comments who put that down there that, hey, John, why didn't you think about rook fb8? And you're right, I should have. So yeah, we did, let the record state, we did in fact look at this in the post-mortem. But yeah, rook fb8 wins the queen. Maybe it's dealer's choice here, win the queen for a rook or win a piece, a minor piece straight up. That's a bit of a close call, but usually you're going to want to win the queen. There's no complications even, I don't think. I guess they can play knight e4. Maybe this is their best. And then bail with the queen. Actually, this is kind of similar to the game, isn't it? Although a much better version because I get to win this pawn on b2 at the end. Yeah, I'd much rather have this compared to the game where their queenside pawns were all intact. But okay, I played bishop takes a4. I'm not shocked like in a fast game that I just looked at bishop takes a4 and nothing else. Because a couple moves back, like the idea of trapping white's queen with a rook coming to b8 just seems so unlikely. It opens up for a split second, but I already had my eyes set on bishop takes a4. You know, I was making a beeline for this idea, just locked in. So that can happen a lot. Yeah, queen d5. Spent a lot of time here just figuring out the best way to play. You know, ironically, I was sort of in a roundabout way coming to the conclusion like, hey, I can take away the queen's escape routes because, you know, I was initially thinking like this, but mentioning lines where white's queen goes to e4 in the end. I think I even thought there was a fork somehow, which is clearly not the case. But yeah, queen d5 takes away this diagonal escape for white. So that's a lot nicer. Bishop c6, another move. Another move that didn't cross my mind. I mean, if you saw this move, if you consider this move, consider me impressed because that unlike rook fb8, I think is pretty tricky. Not taking the knight. Taking the knight seems automatic here once you see that the knight is defending the queen. But bishop c6, oof. Threaten checkmate and threaten the queen. I guess white has knight f4, but I wish I would have considered this. Yeah, knight f3, the sequence continues here. And if takes, now we're threatening mate on h1. White has g2 covered, but h1 mate is a threat. And that's another line where we can win their queen. Wow. I'm going to say it again. I sound like a broken record on this, not only in this video, but in general. You got to analyze your games, guys, if you want to get better. It would be so easy to just write off this game after white played queen takes b7, or, you know, even after I won in sloppy fashion, just be like, well, I should have won easier, you know, hand wave it away. You're not going to get better if you do that. You can see already we're not even halfway through this game, and there's already 3 or 4 things that, with the computer's assistance, were big picture tactical things I didn't even consider in the game as an international master. So if you're not falling in love with the process of analyzing your games and you want to get better at chess, I suggest you figure out why that's not the case and why you're not investigating your games. Okay, so I took with the pawn, which I'd say is the normal decision. Interesting, the engine slightly prefers queen takes of the captures, but I think pawn takes looks pretty normal. Just get the queens off the board. And I was mentioning, you know, avoid the forks and stuff. b3, we're not going to play bishop b5. So this all seems fine. Close call between c6 and d7, I think, with the retreat. And this f5 move, I really dislike this move. I don't know. I think I probably have seen patterns like this, like in hedgehog positions before. I can't really explain why this appealed to me. Maybe like vaguely rook f3. I saw white could go for rook g3 and I wanted to defend that knight. But there's so many other simpler and easier moves. a5, rook fc8. Like I mentioned, I like this a5 move a lot because it kind of pushes back against this bishop. Don't be afraid to put pawns on the same color as your opponent's remaining bishop. But yeah, c4. And I'm below 5 minutes at this point, 97. Close call here too. I wasn't sure exactly if there was a big difference. I just saw if white plays bishop b4 next, I'm going to have to put the knight on an awkward square. So white didn't do that though, but I was ready. Like if bishop b4, yeah, in this case I have a choice, knight e8 or probably knight c8 is what I would do, and then try to push white back, maybe gradually go for e5. But rook e3, now I play a5. Yeah, maybe knight c6 is better. Keep a5 in reserve, which also, knight c6 would stop the knight d4 move. Another move that was not on my radar. Yeah, because now looks like I can't defend the pawn, which is my thinking in the game. Because if I play king f7, that temporarily holds, but rook ae1, and how do I defend that pawn? White has 3 pieces on the e5 square, so advancing it is not going to help. Yeah, and they can take, and then take e6, or just take e6 right away. So just a series of like small inaccuracies, I'd say, starting with f5 in particular, put me in a bit of an awkward spot coming up where I had to, at minimum, burn time. You know, here I went from 422 down to 347. You know, this is climbing the rating ladder, so I don't want to just talk exclusively about my own play. Let's think about what our opponent is doing. I think this is a good player, 2100 plus. They know that they're in a very bad position, if not losing here. They continue to play fast. You know, I do think a lot of opponents who have this play style, they can put a lot of pressure on you, but they don't know when to slow down. I think if White had slowed down at some point coming up, given my time, given that I've slowly been giving back the lion's share of my advantage, they might have been able to create enough problems to draw or even beat me in this game. So, yeah, I think in a pure chess sense, White played pretty superficially. They walked right into this knight e5 move. They moved their light square bishop around multiple times. Queen f3 again, not the best line. But you can make that style work. Like if you see yourself in this player in terms of the time management, first of all, I think that's probably a rarity in people who watch my videos because I'm always preaching like, you know, take your time. But I will say it is possible to make this style work with no increment online. Still relatively fast games, 10 minutes per side, but you got to slow down at some point and realize when you have achieved something that can allow you to reverse the game. You know, even if you were worse or losing earlier, because I think White very nearly achieved that in this game. And again, I'll try to pinpoint like where perhaps that would be. Yeah, like rook ae1, that was a great move. I was trying to bait White into taking here because then this knight d5 move is looking good. Interesting line the computer gives. Take, they have knight c7 at the end. Rook ec8. Some complications. I guess I can trap and win this knight in the end and maintain my advantage. But rook ae1 looks better. a4. Knight c6. Yeah, so I think we're getting pretty close to this. The moment where I really thought White starts to unnecessarily let the game slip. Yeah, so right here. So White's at 7-11. I'm at 234. And for pretty much no reason, White plays knight d6, rook b8, and then b4. Just giving me the pawn. If White had not done that, I think it would have taken a lot of work to break down this structure that White has. Pawns on d3, c4, b3. With the dark square bishop, that could maybe come to c3 soon, especially if they're not getting forked with d4. You can see the advantage. Again, I'm not sure how much to trust this somewhat shallow chess.com analysis, but this is not easy. Certainly compared to the position I had earlier before I played f5, all the stuff that has happened in this game. This, if you could tell White that they could have this position 15 moves ago, I think they would 100% take it. And then some, because let's just say bishop c3, top move of the engine. I got a lot of work to do, and I don't have that many pawns either. Like, very likely this pawn's going to get traded at some point. This bishop's strong. My pieces aren't looking too active. The knight can maybe bop in at a later time. If there is a trade, I don't know which way White should take, but these pawns could be a force at some point. I could easily lose this game with this amount of time. But yeah, White plays knight d6 and then b4. Maybe they just thought this pawn was dead. That's my guess, but they could have played the knight back. So yet another chance to do this. And then I probably would have tried to, sort of like the engine suggesting, saying d4 and then rook a8, but try to get in on the a file somehow. I do have everything covered on the e file, so that might have been the plan. But b4, I take. Yeah, bishop c3. This was a nice find by me, d4. Probably one of my few good moves in this game, if I'm being brutally honest. And, just talking mentality, I'm not a big fan of negative self-talk, but at my level, I just know that this is not the standard that I can uphold for myself. And I'm kind of doing this in jest too, like I'm smiling, I'm laughing. We're coming off this candidates tournament. Try not to get too down on yourself. Like, if you can, have a short memory about your mistakes, extract the lesson, but don't dwell on it as much as you can. I know avoiding rumination is very hard, not only in chess, but in life, especially if you have any perfectionist tendencies. But try to treat it in lighthearted fashion. There's always another game. One chess game is basically a meaningless data point in the entirety of your career. It really is. It's just a drop in the ocean if you're going to be a lifelong chess player. So don't beat yourself up too much about it. I know I can turn around and play a perfect game, probably today if I wanted to, or near perfect if I'm really concentrating. So yeah, I am happy I found d4 though, with the fork. And then kind of an unusual knight c2 where white's rook is boxed out from being able to defend their bishop. And bishop a7 actually is the best move here, but I get the check in, take the rook, and the rest of this is normally a matter of technique, but not in this case. Even bishop c6, like this is still fine, but I didn't see that knight takes f5 was possible. I'm somewhat lucky that I have rook b2 check followed by bishop takes g2. But let's say white goes king e1 and I got sloppy and I played rook takes g2 instead. Well, all of a sudden, we're losing a piece here. I'm up in exchange, but white has 2 pawns for it, so I'm actually not even up any material in this position. Maybe I can get something with this move, but that's another good example of how things could easily go wrong here. Just domino effect. One small mistake, another small mistake, another small mistake, leading to larger mistakes, and then a complete reversal. So, yeah, I probably should have started with rook b2, or maybe best of all, just g6. Just play g6 and guard this pawn on f5, overprotect, and then I can prepare for the bishop to come to c6 in the future. Yeah, bishop d4, knight h5, go after this. Start targeting white's pawns. But bishop c6, g3, I gave that check, and then just decided to play g6. If bishop d4, forking the rook and the knight, I do have rook b1. Yeah, and I was pretty happy to get the knights off the board. Looks like there's many other good moves, which makes sense. But knight e4, just get that darn knight off the board, and white missed that the knight was attacked. But yeah, it's pretty far gone here because I don't know that white can even keep the knight on board. To do so, they'd have to play knight c8. Only safe square for the knight. Does threaten knight e7, but it looks super risky here. Maybe I play, I don't know, bishop d7. I can probably get out because knights are always slippery, but I'm sure we can track this down and easily win. Even if we don't get the knight, just tame the pawns, get pieces off the board, play fast here. Should be more than enough. But under a minute, anything can happen. So yeah, now white blunders the knight. Here, just a little calculation. I took on c4 because if white takes c6, I take e3, c7. I can't play rook b8, nor can my knight stop the pawn, but I have rook c2. I have rook c2, fortunately, defending the pawn from behind. So bishop d4, check, take. Yeah, and I already talked about this phase of the game. Just trying to coordinate, but really, I got nervous. f4. I was having flashbacks from that last climbing the rating ladder game where I thought I could beat the clock in a winning position, and I definitely couldn't. So here with 26 seconds, I just punted a pawn, but we took care of business after that. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed this game. So a sloppy game, I'd say, on both our parts, but some interesting psychological stuff in this. How do you talk to yourself in the course of a game, and especially afterwards when you're analyzing? We talked about that at length. I talked about this style of opponent, this opponent who plays very fast, puts a lot of pressure on you on the clock. They especially like to play no increment games. This is a 10-0 game, no increment, no bonus. those players can be very effective and frustrating to face. It's kind of a rite of passage that you actually have to get used to dealing with opponents like that. Best things I can say is try to make practical decisions, try to be calm. If you sense the game going against you, try not to panic, okay? There were a couple moments where I was panicking in small ways, but there was no full blow up. I was looking for my shots. I had a feeling that the pace that my opponent was playing, they were going to continue to make mistakes. And indeed, they gave back the advantage. But boy, like I said, if White had slowed down and kind of assessed the situation from, a more sober standpoint, in the sense of just really extracting themselves from playing these just bang, bang, bang moves, they really could have hurt me, especially around here. I'm not sure I would have won this game. And again, if you see yourself, you see this style in the opponent's play, it's a long-term bad habit. Again, you can do very well with this sort of style, but a really good player is going to eat you up over the long term. If you're playing increment games or you're playing serious tournaments, you can't get away with this style of play. It's too superficial. But online, hey, it can be tough to deal with. All right. Well, I hope some of you spotted better moves than I did in this game, because there were some cool ones like Rook FB8. If you spotted that, give yourself a pat on the back. Good job. Also moves like Bishop C6. I mean, that's a really gorgeous move. Hit the queen, threaten mate on G2. Really, really nice. And I guess I'll just leave you with the parting thought that you need to analyze your games if you want to get better at chess. It's almost mandatory, I would say. The only exceptions I can think of are guys like Tyler 1, who I strongly suspect doesn't analyze his games afterwards, just based on the volume of games that he plays one after the other. If he does, I mean, more power to him, because that's a great habit. But most players cannot get away with not analyzing their games. Like, you're going to hit a ceiling at some point, just brute forcing. The depth of this game and the insights into your play are truly revealed when you do what we're doing here. Chess games are like an iceberg in that sense. The vast majority of the depth is below the surface. All right. Well, hopefully I'll play a better one next time, but this was still very instructive. I enjoyed it. Hope you guys did too. Let me know if you have any feedback. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you later. Congratulations to Gukesh for winning the candidates, and congratulations to the entire nation of India as well. It's going to be an amazing World Championship match, him against Ding Liren later this year. All right. Bye, guys.